All right, we're live. I want to. So we're gonna have to have some folks watch the chat, see what goes on there, because that's always an interesting one. And I'm gonna do a quick intro. So thank you everyone for joining us. This is the Web 3x3 for February 8th. This is episode 4 of season 2, as Michelle has pointed out. This is your weekly insights into Web 3 marketing and sales for business people. Okay, we're doing this live right now, unedited, unfiltered, as Mike will support. As always, my co-host, Michelle Peterson Clark, the content marketing queen.
Hi, everyone.
I've got Mike Neubauer, your ops guy.
How's it going?
And I'm Mark Angelos. Mike and Michelle, I guess we've been doing this now for a while, but Michelle will be bringing the content marketing chops. Mike will be bringing the technology operations input, and I am business strategy. This week's episode, entitled Google Has Entered the Chat. For those who have not been watching the news, Google has finally rolled out their version of ChatGPT. They're calling it Bard. And we're going to explore the face-off between Google and OpenAI and see how this impacts Web3. Before we start, this episode is sponsored by Invictus Communication, content development and training services for fintech entrepreneurs. All right, so we jump in here. Web 3x3, story number 1. This is coming out of CNBC, of all places. Google announces Bard A.I in response to ChatGPT. This thing is now going to be public in the coming weeks in America only right now. It is the quote-unquote code red plan of the response to ChatGPT. Google's concerned about their reputational risk for providing the wrong info, which ironically happened over Twitter regarding some info around the James Webb Telescope. Incorrectly, apparently Bard said that it was the telescope had been the first telescope to discover exoplanets in our galaxy, and that's not true. So the point is, there's some data inaccuracies. Google's stock price, as a result, cratered today. For those who are following the stock market news, it was one of the largest market share losses in history for the company. I think the second largest. So this is a very big deal. I'm curious thoughts. Michelle, we'll start with you as always.
Well, I think, was it last week we mentioned that, we thought that at some point Google are going to have to do something, aren't they? And, they claim, I think in the article that we'll link to, they talk about they've been developing this for 6 years, that they're about safety and checking notes, high quality and trust. They want it to be scalable. So I guess what they're trying to do is address the fact that ChatGPT has been overwhelmed by the number of users that have been trying to access, and so they've had issues with that. I mean, as you said, obviously the market didn't like it. So
some quick data for some refresh here. ChatGPT reached 100 million users 2 months after launch. That is unprecedented rate of growth. TikTok took 9 months, Instagram 2 years. Mike, what are your thoughts on this? What's going on with Google, ChatGPT?
So when this whole topic came up in this type of conversation, I believe one of the first things we mentioned was, is Google threatened by what ChatGPT brings to the table due to ad revenue, due to all of the various elements that you can now bypass your traditional Google search for? And I think one of us mentioned that it was just a matter of time before they integrate their own version. Why? Because A, they have all of the data and they have all of the assets around the internet to source some of this information to make available in some sort of an AI learning tool that will replace your standard search term. And attached to that very quickly will be advertising. Are they late to the party? No. I think that they smell blood in the water with 100 million users, and I think that they're rushing in right now. They will make mistakes, but over time, I feel like they will have the resources and the availability to, I don't want to say perfect what OpenAI has already done, but definitely offer different value incentives based on the data that it already has.
Right. So interestingly, Microsoft has also revealed they have an OpenAI powered Bing that's already out there now. So Bing is running the next generation language model. They're calling it Prometheus. And supposedly this is more powerful than ChatGPT, whatever that means. More relevant. They're saying it's more up to date and it's safer queries, which touches on the Web3 thing. My own opinion is this: right now, the data sets are all that matter. People don't understand with AI, there's no such thing as racism or bias. There's just data. These are machines. And so when it gets incorrect data from Google, or if you've got more accurate or safer information, who's controlling the data sets and how is it being vetted? And in Web3, the concept is removal of the middleman, right? It's decentralized. That is this so far, the way we're going with AI is the other direction. So I, of course, love the technology, don't love the centralization aspects of it.
It's becoming that app that makes waffles, right? And that's what people want, and that's what people are going to be used to. But and I think that we mentioned this on several different times. I know for damn sure I did. This still is very much manipulated based on the sourcing of information on where this tool can get that data from. There's still fingerprints all over this thing that they're calling artificial intelligence. Now, could it help perfect somebody's search term over time? Yes, just like any learning computer software, it could adapt to that user's input over time. Is it fully functional artificial intelligence that does not need human interaction? Absolutely not. And I think that if it starts promoting itself that way, people are literally taking everything that they hated about Google, Facebook, Bing, Microsoft, and just shining it up and selling it in a new package. And I think that's going to be a troublesome future if people buy into that right now.
So
did it make you, when you were reading about the different stories that we looked at and the stuff that you've been reading the last couple of days, does it make you wonder how much AI is being used in the background already anyway?
what do you mean being used of regular software?
So when I type in top 10 crypto exchanges right now, for example, I know that you get stories or articles or whatever or ads, but it's just made me think a little bit about, well, how much of that stuff is being curated, not just on they talk about search results, but surely they've been using AI type technology in the background to generate those sorts of things already.
They just called it algorithms. It's the exact same learning tool, right? If you
Yeah.
go to YouTube and in their algorithm, you search cute puppies for the next 2 months, they will start seeding you cute puppies as a vetted result that they know you'll engage with. That is a learning technology, right? It's nothing different. This concept, however, has kind of taken it to the next level where instead of sourcing out information that people have published and using that as a result, it's actually creating some sort of a result for you by accumulating all that data, right?
Yeah.
So if you ask ChatGPT, for example, to write a code that can write that can embed an HTML source on a website, it will literally generate that code for you. If you ask that same thing in Google, it will pull up any articles or any kind of content that is relative to the search terms that you put in. It might not be the exact answer.
So one thing I want to add, Mike, it's flying around the Twitterverse right now, is that Microsoft is going to be rolling out a ChatGPT version of BYOD, which is bring your own data. So you can bring your own data sets to this version of ChatGPT that Microsoft wants to introduce. You can basically customize your own AI.
For you. Yeah.
Right. Which is where I think this goes. And that will be very interesting because that will allow small companies to create a moat, if you will, to protect themselves because that's their data.
Well, again, when this whole thing surfaced, we talked about the sources of information and where they're getting that data. I mean, at some point, us as a learning species, we have to condition ourselves to not use what we see on the internet or on ChatGPT as absolute truth.
When
Right?
you say the learning species, Mike, have you met the general public in general? Have you?
I have. And I feel like they've still figured out how to turn on an iPhone, right? Like we're well past, rubbing two sticks together to make fire. So I think that as things continuously evolve in that area, we will see the evolution of the technology to a point where the user experience can be customized, but we have to take it with a grain of salt that, perhaps this doesn't tell the whole story on what we're looking for.
Right.
Too many people are going to condition their way of thinking to use this as gospel truth, though.
So that's already gone on, right? People are they're pointing to the AI as the arbiter of truth, and meanwhile, you can trick this thing even now. The current OpenAI's version of ChatGPT right now, there's an example online where you can tell it it's wrong and it will correct its answer because it's a machine learning. Meanwhile, it's a math problem.
Yeah.
Right? So 2 plus 2, you can convince it equals 5.
But if enough people say it's correct, it will dismiss that and say, "Are you sure?" You know, because everything I showed that it is correct. Like it will provide that type of messaging at some point once it has validated prompts that it is.
But
I
that's the
guess
point right there, Mike.
valid.
Validated prompts is data sets. Validated prompts means what am I feeding the thing that it spits back out?
Correct. And just like an algorithm, right? If everybody in the world decided for the next 2 months you were going to type into Google, the sky is purple. Every single time thereafter, when somebody types in what color is the sky, the answer purple will come up. Why? Because that was the input that people put in that trained the algorithm to think that way.
I'm already thinking about the bots that are going to this is an election rigging all over the place.
Dude, that's no different from Google and Facebook. This is exactly what they did for
Yeah.
election rigging.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So I think, go ahead, Michelle, you had a comment?
So I was going to say, we were talking about ChatGPT being the largest uptake or the quickest uptake we've had of any of the apps that have been out there since they, started being rolled out. I'd been on the wait list for probably 2 months, I think, for Notion's AI alpha test, and I got an email late last night, so I tried it out today. So, and that's pretty interesting because it sits in my Notion notebooks. So, in any of the pages that I create, I can type in comments or questions or sentences and ask it for things, but it also breaks it down a little bit more. Like it will say, do you want a blog post about this? Do you want social media about this? Do you want a bullet point list? Do you want a question and answer quiz on it? Different things like that. So it's actually kind of goes a little bit further than ChatGPT is, which is really good. I was playing around with it all afternoon. It was actually really quite good.
I think that this opens up the door to a lot of really interesting developments, not just in the content marketing world, obviously, but I feel like this is all going to come full circle back to Mike's point there about the data and would you call it prompting it, Mike? There's the story from earlier was Google. This is out of the news right now. Google's AI chatbot Bard offers inaccurate information in a company ad. Shares slump. So basically, there was a short video that Bard had of the Bard on Twitter. So Google's AI thing, it's basically because it came up with some incorrect data around the James Webb Space Telescope. Alphabet, the stock, lost $110 billion in market cap in one day. So that's the second largest daily market cap drop in Google's history. So this is not it matters.
And interestingly, in the CEO's blog post, he said in there that sometimes there's no right or wrong answers with some of these things. So that was really quite funny.
But again, you are now relying on somebody to make that decision, right?
Well,
that's the part that really bothers me about this under the guise of this artificial intelligence learning tool. Somebody somewhere is determining whether that is accurate or not.
Years ago, Mike, people on social media believed that was a view into the world. And then years later, we understood we live in bubbles. We didn't know that. I think we're in that same learning curve right now with AI, but it will be shorter because of our shared experience as a world. Technology is built in a certain way, good or bad, and that data matters.
So to throw it back in your face, as you've pointed out many times, people are lazy, man. They still want that waffle when they hit that button. So I don't think the learning curve is going to be as extensive as I guess we're projecting it here. We're in the weeds on it, right? But you show this to somebody who has only heard of ChatGPT based on a headline they saw somewhere at some point in the internet. They are mind blown about what it can do. They don't even think about the in the weeds type of things that we're discussing. That's where it has tremendous potential. And as long as that information and whatever is sourced, and look, don't get me wrong, I have absolutely no problem with artificial intelligence telling me, hey, I don't know the answer to that. Let me get back to you. Like that's a
Yeah.
very acceptable answer that I think that people need to start, demanding out of this. And not
Yeah, but it
everything
won't
needs
do
an
that.
answer right away. Correct. Because then the stock plummets 180 billion.
I'm going to ask.
Hey, one of the really interesting things of the Notion AI today. So I've started a thing where each day of the week I've got a particular thing. So Marketing Monday and Travel Tuesday and Web3 Wednesday. So I was preparing content for a couple of hours this afternoon, and I was in my Travel Tuesday page and asking it questions about a particular place and just seeing what it came up with. And it gave me some information, and I said, keeping the above information, give me a Twitter post based on the information you've written above. And it did that in the character length for Twitter. But what it also did was it put hashtag Travel Tuesday at the end of it.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean,
And I didn't ask it to do that. So, I was like, wow, that's pretty clever.
that's fantastic. It's a junior assistant for whatever we're doing.
Yeah.
It's a tool. It's like NFTs. It's like YouTube. It's like this StreamYard. It's like LinkedIn. It's a tool. And if people start treating this as a way to make that quick buck and not do anything else, then they will fail.
Wait a minute. There's another use for it?
There's another use for it.
So here's a question that no one can answer, but we need to ask on this show. Does the arrival of AI on the scene help or hurt the journey to Web3?
Is that a rhetorical question, or are you looking?
I'll start. I feel like people are going to want decentralization, but first they're going to love the ease of the waffle maker, as you put it, and they're going to go down the wrong road. And when we realize the data is all biased in whatever fashion, they'll eventually clamor for, okay, it's not the truth. It's only that site's truth. And they're going to want to have, same way with search engines. They'll eventually want to have the shackles taken off, and I want to find my own thing. But right now, I think first it gets ugly.
The seeking and the mission to find information and accurate information dates back forever, right? We used to send people on wooden ships around the world to see what was happening on the other side of the world, and we would rely on them to come back in order to tell us. The information age that we've evolved very, very quickly here has obviously opened up the doors for so many paths of what type of information you want to hear. This is going to be no different. And again, I really fear that we are going to shift our mindsets to adopt to the way the technology is evolving instead of the other way around.
What do you mean by that? Define that, Mike.
So again, we are a learned species, right? So if we rely on the fact that these things that we're calling artificial intelligence are the way that are going to provide those answers that we are going to deem acceptable, it takes the logical train of thought out of the equation, right? Which means that integrating things into a user-owned decentralized system is irrelevant because nobody can think for themselves. Everybody's trying to understand where this goes for AI to be that waffle maker, rather than actually working towards something that uses this as a tool to help improve or start them on an adventure that they want to, or a goal that they want to accomplish.
Right. I think what people don't realize is that the AI, the current language model structures, they just try to predict the next word. That's effectively what's happening here. Yeah. So to your point, Mike, it's not actual creative thinking. I
don't think it onboards anybody into Web3 at all.
Does it hurt?
And the reason why I say that is because if you have a look, after the 2016 election, 2016, where it started to, Facebook and Twitter used to say, you haven't read this article, do you want to retweet it? And Facebook would say, this article, it may be misleading or misinformation, and it kind of gets flagged. So it would tell you that if you were going to share the information or whatever, right? And so I see this as kind of, eventually it'll get to, people have reported this comment as misinformation or something like that. Eventually, if you say, you know, the sky falling, and, you know, 20,000 people said it was, but 2 million people said this is misinformation. And I think it'll start to tell you stuff like that.
Yeah, except that we talked about the Yelp model early on in Web 2 when you could bury bad results. Advertiser-driven models in
turn
Web,
stuff off. Yeah.
right? I mean, this is an interesting. We'll see how it goes.
It's still very much human interacted. Like that's the part that, again, like it's the Web3 component of it separates a centralized element. There is still very much a centralized element to all of this technology right now.
Bingo.
And I think that really is what needs to be understood. And helping people onboard into Web3, just go to ChatGPT and say, give me a list of 10 things I need to do to onboard into Web3. And it'll guide you. Start a MetaMask, do this with your security. Like it'll give you those tools and those prompts. Are people going to understand on how to use a tool to integrate themselves into that Web3 platform? Probably not.
No.
So this sounds an awful lot like work, Mike.
I know. And it's crazy.
Hard work.
Right. Until people have a reason to do it, I agree. I don't know that AI hurts it, but I do think eventually people will realize that there's a bias, if you will, or that the data sets matter. And at that point, folks will one day want to. This is an interesting little side anecdote, but my kids are 16 and 14, and the younger one was asking the older one if he should get on Snapchat. And he was like, what about privacy? And the older one's like, yeah, there's no such thing as privacy. Don't worry. Don't even bother. So there's a generational understanding of centralized control is just the way it is.
But Web3 was developed to combat that.
Agreed. And I think that before we get there, we have to first find the evils of the AI's inability to source absolute truth.
Google just shed a little bit of light on what those evils are. The fact that they are dipping their toe in this water, failing miserably, stock crumbling. Like this is literally the same story over and over again.
Wasn't Google "Don't be evil"? Wasn't that their mission statement at the start?
Yeah, well, I guess it got thrown into the back office.
Then they changed their name.
Yeah, that's another story. They are when $100 billion of market cap evaporates because the product.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. I think that this is. I actually do believe there's a existential threat to Google here that folks are starting to recognize. This is not just a side project. This is not just something that's another money stream for them. This is the survival of this company. And although it sounds ridiculous, and this is probably dramatic, this is the case where, you know, a Toys R Us is the dominant player. Bell Telephone is the dominant player. And then a few years later, they're not. So
Kodak.
Right.
Blockbuster. I mean, we can go on and on.
Hey, I've still got my DVD card.
But who would have ever thought that Google would find themselves in the hot seat at the moment? Like, that is a company with a lot of money. And I think at this point, a la Steve Jobs and Apple back in the day, it doesn't matter how much money you have. It matters who's in the chair and how creative can they get. It'd be interesting to see how this goes.
There's still very much a shiny object element to what we're dealing with. I wouldn't go ahead and bet that Google's going to fail over the next week or month or anything like that.
But the stakes are high enough that they need to get something right.
Well, it clearly has people's attention. Let's put it that way. Yes. 100 million users. You know, Microsoft making the investments, Google coming out with, you know, some sort of a beta platform now. And look, we mentioned this, and this will probably be a good segue out of this topic into the next one. But we've mentioned this a few different times. Everybody doesn't need to be everything to everybody, right? Google has excelled in so many different areas, just like our next story about Coinbase. Right?
I'm going to hit it, but I got to tell you, every big company wants to be everything to everybody.
That's I get it, but that's where people fail. We talked about Coke and Pepsi last week, right? You know, you don't have to have those chips and snacks and Crystal Coke.
And we know that that is a road to serving nobody.
Marketing 101. Everyone's your customer.
It's like when you talk to clients or you talk to businesses and you say, the first thing I always say is, who is your customer? And they go, everyone can use our product. And that is the road. That's a race to the bottom.
All right.
And they go, no, it's not. And you go, bye.
You don't see them at the next year's event.
That's right.
20 minutes later, story number 2. Coinbase NFT pauses creator drops. So for those who don't know, Coinbase, in addition to being a crypto exchange, has an NFT exchange, like a platform. Coinbase NFT is the exchange's NFT platform, and it is now on pause. Coinbase says the marketplace is not shutting down, which means Right. So thoughts on this? I'll share mine. Who wants to start us off? Michelle.
Well, they talked a good game before they launched the platform. They said they were going to do some marvelous things, really exciting, innovative. Then they launched with bottom basic drawer, not doing anything or looking like anything. And I think their user base reflected that. They never really got off the ground. And like it shows that it's really quite difficult to come up against OpenAI, as an example, who have just, dominated the market early on, and kind of everyone's in their wake. I mean, I worked for, 15 months as the head of marketing for an NFT platform. It's bloody hard work to get users.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting thing. I mean, this might be a little bit like the rally coin.
So they claim that
in another month they'll say, "Oh yeah, actually, by the way, we are closing it down."
Coinbase claims they're shutting it. Well, they're quote unquote pause. They didn't use the word shut down. They're
Pause.
pausing it to focus on features and build out. Mike, what do you think?
Have you guys ever heard of Magic Eden?
Magic Eden rings a bell. What is it?
Magic
I
Eden
haven't.
is the original OpenSea for the Solana blockchain.
Yeah. That's right.
Right, yeah.
Okay. And they're the ones that really started with the whole, or I guess excelled at the whole, we're going to add project drops on our marketplace directly. Then OpenSea followed suit. Now, Magic Eden is still thriving. OpenSea is still moving. The concept of having a creator drop on the various marketplace platforms is nothing more than the marketplace taking a cut of those primary sales. Traditionally, the marketplace like OpenSea would take a cut of the secondary sales. So Coinbase's attempt, again, to try to be everything to everybody fails miserably because that's not what they're good at. They are good at being an exchange. They are good at crossing all the T's, dotting all the I's, making sure there's compliance initiatives for a user to properly onboard into crypto. You can trade your crypto. They created an NFT marketplace, fine. But the reality is that people are going to go where they feel their security levels are highest and that they can have the best bang for their buck. Launching a project on a platform that has no users and giving up a cut of those primary sales, that's not a good business model. Yeah. So unless they can figure out a way during this pause to enhance their systems to drive more traffic for those drops, they're not going to start it up again.
But the other thing too is marketing 101 as well is you sell the benefits to your users, not the features. You can have 500 million features. If I don't understand how I, as your user, is going to benefit from this feature, you might as well not have it.
Well, that's again where they failed, man, because their whole model of we're going to do this on our platform means we're going to have more eyes on your project. Of course, a project would be more encouraged to try to drop on their system instead of a traditional, I'm going to build my own website with a minting page and have people go to my website to mint. That's the traditional way these projects were launched.
So I'm going to share that there's product-based thinking at most of these exchanges. And I know because I've worked at stock exchanges. And this is probably an opinionated a-hole comment, but a lot of the times they don't know that you're selling the features and the benefits, Michelle. It's really just they're selling the benefits, not the features. They sell what it does, not what you get from it. And so it wouldn't shock me. I agree, but it wouldn't shock me. You're in the marketing space. These companies don't understand that connective tissue piece and oftentimes miss the boat there. So
we're also missing a very important element on this story in its entirety. Even with Magic Eden, even with OpenSea, even we're talking about the re-centralization of a decentralized system, right?
Well, it was always centralized, Mike. Coinbase?
Not really. Well, Coinbase, yes, fine. But the concept of an NFT project, marketplace, collection, drop, right now you're putting all those eggs into that centralized basket. I can go connect my bank, onboard myself, buy my crypto, buy the NFT, keep the NFT in the marketplace, resell and buy, sell in that marketplace. Everything's under that same Google umbrella.
Right.
It's no different.
But sadly, argumentatively, people want that. right? That's why there's a need for centralized exchanges, because people want that right now. I know that's violating the crypto Web3 ethos, which,
They're
by the way,
failing at those elements. Like, stick with what you're good at. That's all I'm suggesting.
you made another point there, Mike. I wanted to pull out the string. There's confusion, this blurriness of understanding between Web3 and metaverse and crypto. Like that there's an NFT platform on a crypto exchange. People kind of think that's the same thing. But you made the point that what you're good at, no one's good at everything. They're different. I don't think folks quite understand the distinctions here, because in Web3, it's not one big thing. It's an overarching term that encompasses a lot of smaller things, and they're all technology based, and blockchain is the underpinning, but they're not the same.
And again, this is where the black eyes on the industry, the FTXs and everything, really sour those grapes, because it lumps everything into that same Easter egg basket, right? And they are very different. The metaverse and what we call the metaverse is much different from a blockchain or any sort of NFT project derived from it, a tokenized economy. All of these things are independent aspects of it. And I think that over time, as we continuously evolve the technology, that the fork in that road will get bigger and bigger, and people will be able to make those distinctions. Again, if we start putting everything under the same brand of Coinbase and saying we have a solution that everybody can enjoy because everything is this Web3 beautiful metaverse, NFT technology, fungible token technology, you're going to confuse the hell out of everybody.
They're going to be rolling out Coinbase. Coinbase is introducing Crystal Pepsi.
Maybe.
But this is not unlike the fact that the primetime shows appear after the news, which appears after the game show for half an hour before. The networks want you to be on their channel the whole time. Coinbase probably thought, we don't want people to go to OpenSea and maybe use a different exchange to buy their crypto. If we have our own NFT marketplace, then we can keep people on Coinbase's universe for longer and gain more of their attention, get more of their money, etc., etc. I would imagine that would have been some of the thinking behind going, let's have our own marketplace now.
If this was 1995, I would agree with you. But here in 2023, where nobody waits for the news to be over to watch a show, they pull out whatever device they have closest to them and they stream it because they want it now, right? There is no waiting for that program to appear.
Yes, but what I'm saying is that I think was the mindset behind how can we keep people on our website in Coinbase for longer? And they would know from the transactions if people are going to OpenSea or Rarible or Super Rare or Known Origin, and they would have gone, hey, there's 45% of our users are buying NFTs on other platforms. What if we had our own platform? We would keep them here.
I'm going to back you on this.
Won't.
Michelle, I agree with Michelle, Mike, for one reason. Mike, you were clearly right. You two are outlining, or I should say highlighting, the distinction between centralized thinking and decentralized. And just to draw the distinction here, Mike, you're completely right. It shouldn't matter what happens when people can have a device that you have, as Gary Vaynerchuk would say, this is the remote control to your life. But Michelle's right in that it's the same avatar, the same potential client buys an NFT that buys crypto. And so when a Coinbase sees they've got crypto customers and there's a quote unquote brand extension opportunity, they're going to try to open up an NFT platform, even though it's a completely different business, and pretend that they can do this. I worked in these big investment banks, the Morgan Stanleys, the UBSs, and they would always say, we need to be top 3 in everything. It didn't matter if they were the best. It mattered if they had the product out. So that's the thinking.
They're just failing at it, man.
Yeah.
All right,
I don't disagree with you in that either, Mike.
So look, I think the numbers and the statistics definitely speak volume here. They saw an opportunity with primary sales that they wanted to get their teeth in, and they perhaps could be perfecting it. They could be scrapping it all together. I don't know at this point. Bottom line is that's not what they're good at. Their market, the market themselves, the buyers that show up to the expo or the flea market are not on Coinbase. They are the ATM for people to pull out cash to go somewhere else and spend that money.
You want some insight as to whether they're shutting it down or not? This is a quick story for you, and I might have shared this. In 2008, I worked at Lehman Brothers. The company was going down the tubes. Stock price was dropping. This is it was a bad time. At one Friday, I show up at work and there's this loud guy down there shouting and cursing on the trading floor how the media's wrong and they're the F these people and you've no idea we're so powerful. And I said to my buddy, like, who is this guy? I've never seen him before in my life. My buddy's like, oh, that's the CEO. I'm like, we're done. That's Monday. They're out of business, by the way. So I don't know what happens with Coinbase and NFT, but when they say that there's no problem and that they're not shutting down, to me, there's problems and they're shutting down. But we'll see. Speaking of which, by the way, Web3, this one fits right in here. Esports. W3E is a company. They're announcing a series of Web3 Esport tournaments. They're an Esport tournament organizer. And starting on March 9th, they're introducing a whole bunch of esports tournaments that are building on what Axie Infinity did. The concept is massive teams of, it's elimination. Think of sports. However, the interesting part for us is sponsors are including Coca-Cola, Red Bull, Audi, T-Mobile. And for a little fun fact here, over $4 billion was invested in Web3 gaming last year. So this is a real industry. Thoughts on this? Michelle, you want to start us off?
I mean, I think we've touched on it before and we haven't really dived in as much in this area, but I mean, in the next couple of years, sort of gaming in this sector is going to be huge. And, the fact that you've got brands like Coca-Cola, Red Bull are one of the best marketing, innovative brands on the planet. And if they're in this already at this early stage, it has to be successful because it's not often that they pick something that isn't.
Yeah. Mike?
I think advertising in video games is nothing new. I think that's been going on since cartridge days. And I'll pose this question to you. Do you think LeBron James sells more actual jerseys or avatar jerseys on a video game?
I'm going to have to say avatar because they're easier to get.
Correct. It's much more scalable, right? You don't have to make it. It's just a digital file you sell over and over and over again.
Don't have to send it to anyone.
And it becomes a status symbol, right? So the gamification behind Web3 is one of the more integral root nucleus use cases for it. The awarding of tokens and participation and those tokens becoming something that's exchangeable for something else. That's really how, in my opinion anyway, this evolves the technology to a point of mass adoption. Understanding and trickling in some of those key Web3 phrases and use cases in the gaming system, it's only a matter of time before those people start seeking out Coinbase for their drop collection.
I just want to double click on these sponsors. I mean, these are big name companies, Red Bull, Audi, T-Mobile. This is, as we know, we've talked about this, Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, Disney. These are real companies now. Amazon is entering the gaming space for those who aren't aware. This is going to be a $1 billion. It's already a $1 billion business. This is going to be the focal point because the metaverse and gaming, entertainment, and media, these things are built for this whole Web3 is going to be the way it gets led by these types of initiatives. Esports is going to be one of the ones. Who was it that was buying an esports team? Was it might have been Gary Vaynerchuk.
He actually, his brother has a sports agency and they actually represent some of the esports
so there you go.
Gamers
teams.
These are companies that we should keep an eye on.
But here's the thing, like Coca-Cola doesn't give a crap about Web3. They care where the audience is, right? Yeah. And that's where these audiences are moving towards, right?
$4 billion last year, Mike.
What, the industry?
The industry, that was put into it. That was purely investment in it. The money is going where the eyeballs are. I agree with you, but the kids are already there.
I get it, and that's the point. But that's the whole root of advertising. You don't see billboards on side streets. You see them on highways where you can get more eyes on them, right? It's the same concept. Red Bull as genius, and I totally agree with you that they are the pioneers of marketing. They're also arguably one of the more highly expensive marketing campaigns out there. Do you know how much product they've given away versus what they've sold? I mean,
they're going for branding.
I get it. The whole concept is a brand initiative, right? When you think Red Bull and when you think sports, what's the first thing that pops in? Is it the Yankees? No, it's extreme sports, jumping out of an airplane with a snowboard. Like they've branded themselves and cemented themselves into that mindset.
It's
only natural. It's only natural.
Who's the dude that jumped out of space? Remember that dude? That was Red Bull.
That was Red Bull too. But like, it's only natural that those types of evolutions in gaming have their name attached to it.
So a company that I find is in that space of like progressive, forward-thinking Web3-ish type gaming advertising is Chipotle. Chipotle and Disney, I think, are two companies I also, just for my own interest, keep an eye out for those types of things. It'll be fun to see how this develops. I don't know.
Last year, sorry.
Please.
So last year in May, our 14-year-old wanted to go to the CSGO World Championships Grand Final, which was in Belgium. We live in the UK currently. So my husband and him went off for the weekend. 10,000 screaming, cheering kids in a stadium watching 8 guys sitting on a stage with their computer screens playing against each other with the big screens in the background showing the computer graphics going on their computers. John said it was insane, but every kid there was a raving super fan.
So
Vegas does huge events around that now.
I'm going to date myself a bit here, but
Vegas for it.
Anybody that grew up in the 80s waited in line with a sweaty quarter to play at the arcade game. And there's an entire industry now built doing that. 10,000 people are paying money to sit and watch someone else play a game.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's crazy. Right. And I can't even tell you how big the audience was watching it online. Our 25-year-old in Australia was watching it online while my kid was sitting in the stadium in Belgium.
So you guys have older kids than I do, but like, were you those parents that were like, stop playing video games, you'll never amount to anything?
No. I'm in the media space, so
some of the time it was get off there and go to school.
You could make the argument that the real world is in the video games there, Mike. If it's the socialization of the child, like, and that's they're all hanging out there, and you're, to your point, Michelle, that's a little bit like New Year's Eve when people are sharing an experience from different parts of the world at the same moment in the same place. Right? That's what was happening with your son. That's fascinating. There's a psychology there.
There is definitely a psychology there. In fact, I was in the car with my wife this past weekend, and I asked her, I said, have you ever, do you remember like when you had a CD in your car and you were listening to a song and the song ended and you're like, let me put the radio on. You put the radio on and all of a sudden it's the exact same song that you were listening to. Are you changing the channel? No, you're even more into it because you know somewhere, somehow you're sharing that experience with somebody else.
What's a CD player, Mike?
Compact disc. I don't know. I use it as a paperweight now somewhere.
So for the record, my 16-year-old made me buy a CD player, a remote that he could plug in with you because he wanted to know what it was.
You mean you don't have one still? What is wrong with you?
All right. So in a related news here, State Farm is picking TikTok over TV for a new Super Bowl ad. State Farm will not have a TV commercial in the Super Bowl, which is being played in America on Feb 12. Instead, their mascot, Jake, will be sitting with a TikTok star. And this is a different type of marketing, obviously, right? Influencer marketing is here to stay. And obviously, this ties directly into Web3 in terms of creator communities. Thoughts on this one? Michelle, let's start with you.
The thing with this, there's two things about this that are interesting. One is it Farm State or State Farm? State Farm. It's an American, so I don't know the company.
Same thing.
They are moving into trying to get the next generation of people to insure with them. So this is one way they see of doing that. So that's
Does it work?
Probably.
You think it's, yeah, I don't know. I mean, no one knows. I ask these questions, by the way. I don't have the answers either.
I mean,
Mike.
TikTok, watching, 30-second things on TikTok's a thing these days, apparently. I don't.
It is
really
interesting that they went with a TikTok influencer and not a different channel's platform. Mike, what do you think?
TikTok's pretty hot right now in terms of user uptake and number of hours. I think, was it last month or the month before that the amount of viewing time on TikTok exceeded people's time on Facebook for the first time, I think. So, in that point of view. Mike can talk about that, but then we'll talk about Super Bowl ads as opposed to.
Real fast to that point, though, Mississippi, Indiana, Louisiana, North Carolina, South Dakota, and Wisconsin have all banned TikTok on state-owned devices here in America.
Good.
Mike, what do you think?
I think, unlike other, I guess, social media platforms, this one wasn't developed here. So there's a big security risk. So I'm glad that, the people that we rely on for security are not implementing that. But as far as the ad goes, this is nothing new, right? We've seen this play done before. And I'll reach way back in the before time bag for this one. I remember a Super Bowl when I was a kid where MTV hosted Celebrity Deathmatch.
I love it.
Aired it at halftime of the Super Bowl. So rather than sitting there watching the boring, whatever,
I remember this.
You got to watch Howard Stern fight whatever,
To the death.
To the death. And it was this little clay animation, and it became this huge thing. And over time, I guess it died out. I think that this is just the next iteration of what Michelle pointed out about trying to target that next generation. Clearly, Celebrity Deathmatch didn't really have that sponsorship element, but there were ads in there. There was commercial breaks that MTV was able to source. And I don't know what the data is. I don't even know if it was trackable back then, but I would be very interested to see how much viewership that got versus the actual halftime show of the game.
So since we're going back and dating ourselves, you guys remember, was it Bud Bowl?
That was that was, and John and I talk about Bud Bowl all the time.
They had data on that.
They had a lot of data on it.
I know.
But the way that they positioned it, if I remember correctly, it was Bud versus Bud Light. And I think the way that they did it, they would do various plays throughout the game at different segments of commercials. And the winner of Bud Bowl would be whoever had the most sales the year before. Right.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Budweiser and Bud Light. And that's really how they would basically explain, their business model. I could be wrong on that.
No, but you make a good point, Mike, because Bud Bowl, I remember this. And also, if you think about the regular Super Bowl halftime shows, whoever it may be, the viewership spikes for those things. So
correct. Even
in Australia, we used to only ever tune in for the halftime entertainment. We never watched the football.
Right.
So I remember when Michael Jackson did it and J-Lo's showing her boob, that costume malfunction time. They're the two I remember the most.
Right. I mean, but that's what people that don't like football will watch the halftime show.
Of course.
In honor of J-Lo's bud, it was actually Janet Jackson. But
Janet Jackson. That's right. It was too. Sorry. Yes, it was.
Yeah, it's funny. You guys tune in for the halftime show. All of America goes flush the minute that.
Yeah.
So true. There's a giant plumbing problem here in North America.
But the interesting thing about the Super Bowl this year, I think for our Web3 listeners, if we segue back into drawing it back to Web3, was that last year, as we may well remember, it was dominated by crypto ads. And in fact, it was dubbed Crypto Bowl because we had FTX, Crypto.com, and Coinbase. Coinbase had the barcode, like the Pong on the black screen, and then they did the we're so sorry, our website crashed thing, so it increased FOMO even more.
Yep.
This zero crypto ads in Super Bowl, and I did a little bit of research before we came on. So last year, they estimate the crypto company spent $54 million on ads during the Super Bowl last year. It cost $6.5 million for 30 seconds last year. This year, $7 million. So if you think about, it's probably a couple of $1 million for a company to make the ad, $7 million for 30 seconds. So it's a $10 million proposition. And as the marketing data type person, KPIs and whatever, how do you measure a return on spending $10 million on a 30-second ad?
Ask Pepsi. They spent a hell of a lot more on Super Bowls with the halftime show. And, they have multiple placements throughout the game with Frito-Lay and Cheetos and Doritos and, all that stuff. But I think that, and there's a Vegas line this year on how many QR codes are going to be implemented in these ads. I saw one during the championship game weekend where it was a Tide ad, I think, and it had a QR code. And it said, scan here when you wash your clothes. It's guaranteed to be fresh by Super Bowl Sunday.
It's amazing.
And it's crypto.com, whatever that ploy was, they opened up a can of worms, Coinbase, sorry, that I think is going to be leveraged even without the crypto element here.
They're working on their NFT platform right now, Mike. Don't worry about them.
Yeah, whatever. We're going to see.
But the QR code thing, though, Mike, is interesting because that means you can measure how many people click on that.
Yes, but convert, I don't think that's,
no.
I don't know what the conversion element will be on that.
But if your objective for advertising during Super Bowl is brand recognition or increased visibility, then if people click on the QR code, then that's a good metric, isn't it?
So it's an immediate KPI, right? Which I think that we get lost in today's marketing that's the only driving factor.
No.
I think that a Super Bowl ad, and this is where State Farm will fail, a Super Bowl ad holds value in the viral potential it has in sharing afterwards and the subsequent marketing efforts that come from it. Think of the cavemen from Geico, right? Think about all these platforms. Like all of these were stemmed and sourced throughout the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is, I guess, once again, in the before time, it paved the way for all of the commercials you would see throughout the year, right? Yeah. It would basically lay out, this is the direction this company is moving in their marketing strategy for the next 12 months. And people would pay to have that initial in your face, I'm going to try to target as much as we possibly can attitude for it. I don't know if it has the same value.
Unless they kill off Mr. Peanut and bring him back a few weeks later.
It's possible.
Yeah, so I think this is interesting. You raised a good point, Michelle, about the amount of advertising from the crypto folks. Like, I think it was you who sent out that meme. It was a homeless tents on the city street. It says crypto Bitcoin conference 2023. Like the number of advertisers in the crypto world that are at the Super Bowl right now, 0. That's an interesting metric. And
it'll
Mike,
be really interesting to see if crypto.com is still sponsoring the Formula One when the first Grand Prix kicks off for the year in March.
And Mike, another point I wanted to refer back to branding. We're in recession right now, whether folks admit it or not. And so companies don't want a brand in recession. They want transaction, for good or for ill. So big money at the Super Bowl for branding purposes, I think that's not really the plan right now for them. They want to make sales happen, which is why the whole State Farm doing a TikTok influencer campaign really is interesting. I don't know where this goes.
We're going to see a lot of tax company ads just because that's the time of year that we're in. That's an immediate return on investment. Nobody's running out at the end of the first quarter and buying a pack of M&Ms. I can guarantee you on that one. So the immediate return on Mars for doing that is that's not their goal.
Mike, most of the Americans that watch the Super Bowl can't run, so don't keep going.
Possibly, yes. But the point, I guess, is that it's not, and you're right, the economic times and everything, it all makes sense. There's still going to be a ton of beer commercials, snacks commercials, car commercials, because that's the type of audience that still watches the game. Maybe at halftime, there'll be other commercials that are more relative towards, a wider range of targeted audiences with respect to artistic and singing and dancing. And because that's really what halftime offers.
Mike,
it's a football game.
I want to pull on that for a second. The generational divide is what I want to just real fast, because Web3 ties in. We were talking about the metaverse and how the kids are playing the games online. Right now, the Super Bowl is not online, right? It's on television. My kids will watch the Super Bowl because I'll make them, but they don't even know if they know what a TV is. I'm being facetious, but I wonder how this whole TikTok influencer attempt to try to bring the younger generation the message, it's not going to happen on the television, clearly. So I think there's implications here, and Web3 is directly impacted by this, because who has the largest community and can, grow it through the tools such as NFTs, or who's going to be attracting the attention of these advertisers like Red Bull.
But within a couple of hours of those ads being on, though, people will have made YouTube videos about it, and it will be on YouTube, and then kids will watch it because it's on YouTube.
And that's where the branding takes the next level, right? You're not just focused on that 30-second spot. That $7 million spend is amortized over all of that watch time on YouTube throughout the course of the year. I mean, look, I never understood the companies that spent all this money, even with multiple ads, and they were just super boring. and people are like, what the hell are you doing here? But Doritos had epic ones, man. I mean, like epic, the baby eating the Doritos, you know, in the when he was in his mom's belly, like just making like these were epic ones that people will forever remember if you watched it. And you just like this time of year, I guarantee you, look at our Google algorithm and see how many times the best Super Bowl commercials have been searched for in the past week.
Did you mean the Bing algorithm?
Bing, Yahoo, ChatGPT, whatever the hell is next.
Notion
it's all
AI.
the same.
I think that's the story of the week. We keep an eye on this thing, how it works out with the AI battle face off here. I think Web3 is definitely going to be impacted, but not in the immediate. The other parts of what we've talked about here today have been very interesting. I really feel that Coinbase, the NFT aspect of them, I'm not bullish on that. We'll see how that goes. On that note, please.
End of Q1 gone. My prediction. Are we doing a prediction show? That's my prediction.
Why not? Mike, final thoughts from you?
Well, I mean, it is Super Bowl week. You know, we still have a fantasy football project. We have a Super Bowl Squares pool that we're running through the Unfantasy project. So if anybody's interested, it's unfan.xyz. It's the Docs special Super Bowl Squares pool. We have some awesome prizes and giveaways, and we have a bunch of prop bets and, you know, things that you can make as part of your selection. It's going to be a lot of fun. Predictions for the game is going to be my final thought. What do you guys think is going to happen? Michelle, you go first.
Who is it?
Okay, Mark, you're up.
I'm going with Philadelphia Eagles on this, my friend. As a Jersey guy.
I'm going against them. Yeah, no, the other ones.
All right, I'm with Michelle. I'm with the other ones.
Kansas City.
Yeah, I think Kansas City has. I think Kansas City's going to win, and I hate everything Philadelphia. So
just correct my understanding.
Dorothy had nice shoes, and she wanted to go to Kansas, so they're going to win.
Yeah, but I don't remember to go to the Kansas side of Kansas City.
Mike, just remind me, in Kansas City, when the teams win, do they grease up the street poles?
They do not. And that just kind of shows you, I mean, you're talking about a city that idolizes a fictional character.
Hold on a second. Let's not. This
like
Web3, baby.
Got it. Sure. Okay. The whole premise of the underdog attitude is idolized in a bronze statue that's the focal point of the city.
I actually think it's not bronze.
Whatever the hell it is, it's fake. It doesn't exist. It came from somebody's imagination. So, a city of fans that really have a lot of learning to do on how to be fans in my professional.
So listen, Michelle's not American. We love Philly. Philly's got a reputation in our country. It's a gritty city of crazy fans. And the hockey team has nicknamed them the city of brotherly shove. They're an aggressive team that likes to win. The city that is, and so we'll see how it goes. We got fans in Philly, Mike.
Santa Claus. Let's just put
it. The only thing I know about Philly is from the West Wing about the hoagies and the whiz and whatever.
So while I have the floor,
aging myself,
I want to remind everybody that this is a general business discussion. This is not intended as investment advice in any way, shape, or form, nor is it sports betting advice. This is informational purposes only. So I want to thank everyone for joining us. We're at the hour. We will be back next week, every Wednesday, 4 p.m. Eastern time, LinkedIn. We would ask if you would like this stuff to follow us. We have a LinkedIn page, Web3x3. That is Web3, the number, BY, and then the word 3. No comment.
And give that link a share.
Yeah.
Yes.
We appreciate you guys tuning in, and feel free to leave comments. We will send some clips out, but that's all I've got for the week. Michelle, thank you for joining as always. Mike, thank you for joining.
It's been a pleasure as always.
We'll see everybody
next
week.
See you next week, everyone.
Peace.
Bye.